Welcome to I Could Never, a podcast about non-monogamy and the many ways it can look. I'm Genevieve from Chill Polyamory on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and I'm joined by my co-host and partner, Ishik.
Yes, I'm Ishik, and I am here digitally enhanced for your listening pleasure. But, as always, not alone here today. Our guest, fresh from once more basking in the revitalizing beauty of their native Puerto Rico, is the wonderful Vico Ortiz. Welcome.
Thank you. Buenas. Oh, my goodness. Thank you for that intro. An absolute pleasure and delight to be here. When Genevieve messaged me about this, I've been following you on Instagram for quite some time, and I really love your content. It's been the topic of conversation in many conversations that I've had with partners and with myself and in journaling as I continue to deconstruct non-traditional relating, and so I'm very thrilled to be here.
I'm so glad. Awesome. That makes me so happy.
Wow. Somebody's blushing.
Yes, I saw that post about Ricky Martin liking one of your things, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, is Ricky Martin? What's happening?"
I was beside myself.
I got excited.
Yeah, that was a good day.
Yeah. For any of our listeners who are not familiar with Vico, you might know them from their role as Jim Jimenez on HBO's Our Flag Means Death, potentially as host of the Today in Gay podcast.
Yes.
Or from, frankly, being one of the most badass drag kings that I have ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
So we are definitely super excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you.
It sounds like maybe it goes both ways, so that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But first, I have to clue all of our listeners in on a season-long joke that you will not get until the very end of the season, so you have to listen to every single one. It's Vibe or Vent time.
Okay. For anyone listening for the first time, we always like to start the show off with a little icebreaker called Vibe or Vent, where we'll each take a beat to share a bit about something that's either really making us happy recently or something that sucks that we need to get off our chest. So if y'all don't mind, I can start us out.
Bless.
I'm vibing today. I am just coming back from a, 7-day burnout-induced pause on work. And, it's stressful to stop working when you're like, that's what created the burnout, was a lot of just, thinking constantly. Even when I'm in bed, I'm just thinking about ideas and stuff. And I have so many projects going on that I love to do. But it was imbalanced. And now coming back, we've got like a little bit more boundaries because I work at home, so I just carry work to all areas of home. And but I feel rested. I feel so much lighter. So, that's a win for sleep, if I could, this is an advertisement for sleep. It's a game changer. So I'm vibing on that just because I had the opportunity, which is not always possible. So yeah, I'm feeling good today. But anyway, I would love to toss it to you, Vico. How are you feeling? Are you vibing or venting today?
No, I'm totally vibing as well, because it has been, there was a lot to vent, and I have been venting, a lot to process. A lot of transitions have been happening in my life. So now that I got a lot done, I'm vibing. It feels good to feel grounded again. There was a moment where I was like, I don't know what's happening, what's going on. So having a bit of that feels like, okay, I'm back to myself again. I'm back to my body, and that feels really, really good. So I'm vibing with that.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think especially because that's definitely not an uncommon, I think that lack of feeling grounded and kind of unmoored. I think a lot of people are there right now, and we got to keep moving. And I'm really glad that you're there and you're feeling good and you've got kind of a handle on what's going on.
Yeah, feels good. How about you?
I'm the downbeat one here.
Okay,
I'm
that's
the downer.
Totally fine.
And it's allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm venting. I'm venting today, and I'm gonna be totally honest. I don't really have like a fully cohesive thought, but this has been a kind of a tough weekend with another partner, actually. There's a Comet partner who has been a part of my life for a really long time, for like 7-8 years. And since they're a Comet, they're not around a lot, and our interactions are a little sparse. And yeah, it was a tough weekend. We got kind of into a big fight over a very small thing that became really big because it sort of revealed what I'm worried might be kind of a fundamental disconnect between how we operate in relationship. I had been feeling more and more in the past year or so that it was maybe building towards something more integrated in the future, right? And I didn't
Oh,
know, I
yeah.
didn't have some kind of plan for that. There wasn't some kind of intention, but it was incredibly deeply disappointing
Yeah.
and pretty saddening. So I don't know exactly where it's going right now, and that sucks.
Mm.
I don't feel like it's something that's just gone from my life, but I think it might be something that might need to be re-examined, because if this is what such a small kind of insignificant conflict looked like, that's not something that I can have closely integrated in my life. So it's pretty shitty. It's
Yeah.
pretty shitty. So
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Especially because your comment, you don't really see these things so frequently. So they don't come up as they come up of I'm sure they come up, of course, but because of the structure of the way the relationship operates, like you're not with this person, you know, once a week in person, or like three times a week, or like or doing cohabitation or whatever that may be. So like those moments like don't show up as much. So it makes a lot of sense that all of a sudden it's like, wait, maybe there's a fundamental difference in the way we like approach conflict.
I mean, exactly. You hit the nail on the head, and that's exactly what kind of happened. And I think, and maybe we'll get into some of this because, being a public figure who's out as polyamorous, this might be something that you also had to navigate. But like, how much to say, how much to share about, especially the struggle times, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it can be a lot easier to be like, everything is great. I have all these great partners and it's so awesome, and we love each other. It's all great. But like, yeah, it can be tough to say, like, yeah, actually, it's tough sometimes.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So, well, I mean, I would say in the interest of that, I'd love to kind of start from getting a sense of what the shape of your relationship structure looks like, and if you can tell us a little bit about the relationships that are close to you right now.
Absolutely. With a very, very general brush stroke, I practice non-hierarchical solo polyamory with major asterisks on non-hierarchical and solo, because of course there's a lot of debate with like what hierarchy means, and I currently only have one anchor partner at the moment, and I feel really good about that. I think in the past I would have like immediately gone into the apps to like find another person, and I am again reminding myself that of course, yes, now I have a lot of capacity, but I don't want to just immediately find, somewhere else to put that capacity, that it's like another person. So I'm like putting that energy in more creative projects and really setting up what it is that I desire moving forward when it comes to meeting someone new. And while I say non hierarchical, I acknowledge that there will be and there are relationships that I have carried privilege. There was a time I had two anchor partners. One of them lived in the same city as me, and the other one was long distance. That person that lived near me had the privilege that if I wanted to have an impromptu, spontaneous date, they could, while the person that was long distance did not have that privilege. And in that same situation, whenever I visited the long distance partner, I lived with that person. So the person who lived in the same city as me did not have like cohabitating privileges, while the person that was long distance did have that. So I acknowledge those things. I had two anchor partners, and I was kind of feeling pretty much like, okay, I got the hang of like, being in these two relationships. And I'm like, I think I have a little bit of time to kind of like see someone a bit more casually. And when I say casual now, that doesn't mean that there's a lack of care, respect, consideration, love. And so when I met this person and we talked about expectations and everything, I was very upfront about like, hey, I currently have like two anchor partnerships. These people I am very enmeshed with, like emotionally, physically, spiritually. I see them pretty often. I have plans with these people in the future, and that's how I'm operating with this. My capacity for something new is pretty low. I can see someone like maybe once every other week, once a month. I know that seems like very short amount of time, but like that's where I'm at right now. And they were like, actually, this is actually perfect because I also have a lot going on in my hands. So like this works beautifully. And we set up an amazing conversation about like what our expectations were in terms of like talking to each other, how often do we text, how we check in, SDI testing, all that jazz. There was such like understanding of like what we wanted out of it. And I think that's just good all across the board, regardless of how short or long the relationship, is going to be. Anyway, I say a light brushstroke and I go into like a whole conversation about each thing. I also like, I mean, whenever they hear this, I have a friend who I consider like a life partner, anchor partner, you know? Our romance is incredibly platonic and beautiful, and I think that also this person is someone that I very much like consider when it comes to like big life choices, and someone that I prioritize in seeing and going on dates with and creating and fostering life with. So something that also polyamory has helped me is that yes, of course, there's like romantic and sexual relationships, and also, of course, your friends can be part of the polycule. So yeah, I have one anchor partner that's romantic and sexual, and I have a platonic romantic anchor friendship that I like love and adore.
Hmm.
I would love to kind of get a sense of your starting point with non-monogamy. Kind of what was your earliest exposure, or your first experiences trying to navigate it.
Oh yeah, definitely nowhere near what it is right now at all.
Mm.
Like a lot of polyamorous stories, I began in a monogamous relationship that was very long term, and I wasn't voicing a lot of my day-to-day anxieties because I was with someone who had a really rough job, and I did not want to overwhelm this person with my mundane, casual, regular day to day troubles. So I kept it all to myself. And we lived together, the whole shebang. Then this person got a job in a different city. And I was like, all right, let's do long distance, right? Because, like, I'm going to be with your ass forever. So you do this job for the year and then you come back and bada bing, bada boom, we got it, right? And when this person left, and all of a sudden I am left by my lonesome, all of the things that I kept to myself started to bubble up. And also, like, I was by myself going to things and places, and people were like looking at me with like googly eyes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm attractive. People think I'm cute. And I got all like mushy and shit. And I was like, oh, well, maybe we should just open up the relationship, right? Like, while we're in this 1 year long distance moment. And I had no knowledge. I came in at this like completely raw with no information. I just had been hearing about people like opening relationships, and I was like, for sure, I can open it to like fuck around. And we didn't have any of the conversations that we needed to have. And this person said yes to me because this person did not want me to leave, which is that's a red flag for everybody. and uh and so we opened it, and I was just like doing it because I was like, people think I'm hot. So I was like, I want to fuck around. And so it started with that, but then I started to get a lot of attention, and then I started to kind of catch fifis for one of the people that I was like seeing, and I was like, oh no, because then I was not ready for that. And I also was being really sneaky. It was a lot because I did not want to like, upset her more. And which made it, of course, worse. And I remember one time this person told me, like, you're cheating on me. And I was like, well, you said yes to opening the relationship, which was such a bullshit thing to say. I apologized later down the line when I realized that, yes, I was cheating on you. And I'm really sorry I hurt you. And took accountability for my actions and all that jazz. But at the time, I did not have the tools at all to handle all the mistakes I was making. So instead of like pausing, I shut it all down. I broke up with the person that I was with. I ended things with everybody that I was seeing, and began what I like to call the fuckboy phase. But yeah, like I didn't do sleepovers. I didn't wake up in someone's like apartment and made them coffee. Like if I had an arrangement with a friend, if we were hanging out as friends, it was friendship. We were not holding hands. We were not being romantic. And if later we wanted to like hook up, it would be like a different thing. While some of those things could have been boundaries, I definitely know that I was putting up walls. And I rode that high for a while. Ego was like, I'm clocking in. I got you. All those uncomfortable feelings, don't worry about it. You're fine. You're so good. You're like, in just feeding me off on that, right? So I was like, all right, bet. But upon further review, I was so not ready to like face my own feelings about anything, about the grief that I was feeling for the breakup, about the guilt that I felt, about the blame that I felt, I was not ready to, my ego was working overtime, protecting me from all the uncomfortable feelings. And then lockdown happened, and the hyperspeed of external stimulation stopped immediately. I had to just jump out of the train. There was no other option but to stay at home and not go out, period. And nothing to look at but within myself and face all the demons. And so I was so ashamed for all the mistakes I had made, and I was so scared of looking like a bad person. I was just like, I know I'm not bad, but I keep fucking up. And a lot of like crying finally, because I was like, I didn't let myself feel the grief of that breakup up. And like it had almost been 2 years since the breakup happened when I finally like allowed myself to process that relationship and to finally realize the ways in which like I had hurt this person, and to like take accountability for that and know that that didn't mean I was a bad person, and just really hold space for multiple truths at the same time, which for a while I was operating from it's all or nothing, it's this or that. So I it's not just that I know like while I was in my like quote unquote fuckboy phase, I desperately wanted depth. I desperately wanted to like know someone deeply. I wanted to like connect emotionally, but I just was so scared of doing so and continuing to hurt people because that's what happened to me. And it really deterred me from opening up and like being vulnerable and surrendering to an emotional connection, even though I desperately desired it. But it took me a little bit to figure that out. But I knew that I was able to feel feelings for more than one person at a time, and I knew that I wanted it. So yeah, but it took. I've been practicing it intentionally 4.5, almost 5 years, and it's been fucking beautiful.
So, with there being so much struggle when you opened that first relationship, was it hard, or like what was it like as you tried to build new habits and do things a little differently?
In my very first like intentionally polyamorous relationship, which is with the partner that I'm with right now, I began making mistakes, and they had experienced a really terrible relationship right before with someone that cheated on them, and things that I was doing were not wrong. They were just triggering old wounds. I had an opportunity where I was gonna repeat a pattern. I noticed it, and I had to be like, okay, I'm gonna have to talk about this, because if we go in this direction, I'm putting an expiration date on this relationship if I continue. Like if this is the path, if I continue this path, we have an end. There's an end. Like there's no other. Like I'm gonna end up resenting them. They're gonna end up resenting me. And I just saw it. I was like, I saw the pattern. And I was like, oh no. Okay, so I either repeat it, or we stop it on its tracks. Stopping in its tracks was rough though. We call that event the boomerang. We have been talking about cohabitating. From my perspective, I took it as if we didn't try cohabitation, then we will no longer be anchor partners and they would leave me. And in my head, I knew we don't have to live together in order to be like we can be anchor partners and not cohabitate. But if we don't cohabitate, they're gonna leave me, and they're gonna stop being my anchor partner. So I panicked, and I expedited the process of moving in together. This was like 2 years ago, and because out of fear, I was not ready. I could feel myself like really just like not ready to like let go of my place as being my place. I could see myself getting really tense whenever they would visit, and like being like, oh, I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like this, and like I could see myself really just like, oh no, like I don't know if I can live with this person, fuck. But we're doing it because if we don't do it, they're gonna leave me. And then I had to like really sit with the whole all or nothing again. It's like, why is it all or nothing? How about we slow down? How about we like, hey, it's not that it's off the table. It's just that like, let's take a moment to really think about this. I need to think about this. And so when I noticed that I was doing it from fawning and people pleasing and all that jazz, I had to sit with that. I made a little document, a little Word document, because I get really nervous. And not so much anymore, but in the very beginning, whenever I like brought up conflict, I got really, really nervous. So I would make a document where I would write my intention for this conversation is da 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 da. And then like, then I would like break down like this happened and it triggered da 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 da. And this comes from da 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 da. And I would just like create like a Google sheet.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, when that day happened, I set them down on the couch and I had my laptop with me with the Google sheet and just like sobbing, like letting them know I'm like, I know I've said all this and it's not that I don't want it, I just don't want it right now, and like panicking. And of course they're also like getting triggered because it's like they've been figuring out their side of logistical stuff to like move in with me.
Like they started planning.
Yeah, they started planning. They started doing a bunch of stuff. Like they were on. Like it sucks, you know. That's what we call it, the boomerang, because it just kind of we were going one way, and then like all of a sudden, wait, just kidding. And so that was rough. And of course, you know, they had a moment. They were like told me they really got to sit with that, because have there been other moments where you've been fawning? Have you been in other moments that you've been people pleasing? Like, I'm having a really hard time like trusting right now. And I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. And I really, like, I was like, I really want you to know that this was not easy for me. And I really want to be with you, like, for as long as this life lets me. And I am going to do my best so that as we continue to grow, I can notice these things beforehand and not just say yes because I'm panicking, but like take some time to process rather than just jumping in the gun and like, you know, saying yes because I'm afraid of rejection. So like, I know this sucks right now. I know that you have a really hard time trusting me. We'll figure this out, but I just know that I'm committed to like unlearning this and like having a healthier like relationship moving forward.
Wow, that sounds like it was really intense.
It's not for the faint of heart, but it took 2 years and a pause in the relationship as well. Sometimes people say, let's pause in the relationship, and pause is just an elongated version of like, well, we'll break up at the end, which has happened to me too.
So how did you actually bring that up though, to make sure that it wasn't just a long drawn out breakup?
After a bit, it was like, okay, I want you. And they were like, I want you. And I was like, okay, I know it's going to be really rough to hear. And I think that it might be triggering, but I was like, I think that having a somatic end to this relationship that we currently have, and then give us like a 2-week pause and reevaluate how we want to show up for each other in this new relationship will be really, really helpful to like then be like, oh, hi, like, hello, new version of Vico,
Yeah.
and like all that jazz. And so we did a whole ritual for the end of that previous relationship. We ended the first book of our never-ending trilogy, and then now we're opening a new book, and we're like, we're not forgetting about the previous book, because of course there's a lot of stuff there that we're of course learning from, and like we can go back and be like, oh yeah, remember that time that happened. But having that somatic end and then have a somatic beginning was like fucking beautiful.
Wow. That's such an arc.
So, you know, you described how much you used to avoid having hard conversations, and I'm wondering how you got from there to being able to have a talk as hard as this one you're describing in the boomerang, you know? Can you think of a time where you still had that old impulse to avoid conflict, but were a little more determined to do things differently?
Oh my gosh. I know that when one of the first initial conversations around them being in the same city as me was a touch and go. It was like, how do you feel? Okay, maybe you don't live with me, but how does it feel like living in the same city? That way we're no longer like long distance in the way that I have to like take a plane for 12 hours, you know? Are you sure you want this? And I was like, yes. It's not that I don't want you nearby, is that I'm not ready to like have you in like my apartment just yet. And so it took us a bit. I mean, this convo happened 2 years ago, and then it wasn't until last year in November where we began talking about cohabitating again. When we were negotiating how to look like and how it is, it's like, oh man, this is the difference of like having a conversation where you're coming from a space of like safety and certainty within myself and yourself, and feeling at ease, knowing that like we're not saying this because we want to please the other. That's fucking rad. It really is different. Like energetically, I feel the difference, and it feels really fucking good.
So as you were expanding your relationships and adding new people to the mix, you know, another anchor partner, casual partners, your your anchor friend. How did you talk to them and decide how each relationship would look?
For sure. I know that with the anchor partner that I'm with right now, when we first met, we both know that we went in pretty hot and heavy. Hot. We came in hot, and we became anchor partners pretty quickly. And of course, is with the boomerang and everything, we've had various ways of renegotiating. We know ultimately we wanted to be with each other for the rest of our lives. And it got for a moment where I was like, oh shit, hold up. How does that look like? Right? How does that look like? We had a moment where we were sitting down and I was like, hey, we've been together the longest, and whomever comes next, we're gonna have to acknowledge that we have privilege in the fact that we've been together the longest, and whomever is new, this is a new person, period, right? And whether we're dating this person at the same time or we're dating individually, whatever that may be, because we've talked about the potential of like, what if like we like adopt a kid and like we meet another was it a throuple or a couple or a quad, whatever, of parents with kids that are on the same age, and we all kind of like dig each other and we decide to like anyway, the point is that
Yeah.
it's always a fantasy that I'm like, what if we're just like in the playground and we're seeing a bunch of other parents on the side and we're like, hey, I like your parenting style, hey. And you're just anyway.
Yo, that's some pretty good middle-aged flirting. Like, I love your parenting style.
What's up?
I know, right?
Mm.
It's like, what's
Oh.
up? Do you want to parent together? It's an option.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like we have to acknowledge that we have a privilege of being together the longest. And when I met the other person, it took a little bit to become anchor partners because I also had learned from the previous relationship that like, okay, let's maybe not rush into anchor partnership like right off the bat, but I do feel a strong connection with this person. I want to explore what that looks like. Of course, there were a lot of like ups and a lot of downs and a lot of figuring out how does that look like, and ultimately, ended in the termination of the relationship. And so that's been something that I've been like processing a lot, because I know that for sure, like moving forward, whenever I meet someone new, I want to be really intentional about the questions I ask right off the bat. It's like, okay, I have this like really strong connection. What's your capacity look like? What's my capacity look like? How does your like structure look like right now? I remember when I've been on a few dates, not recently. I remember I like went on a date with someone and I was asking questions more because I went on a date with this person more so to have like a physical, intimate relationship, nothing necessarily in a much more deeper emotional level.
That was a very diplomatic way to say it. You were trying to fuck. Like,
I just wanted to fuck. I just wanted to have sex. And so the questions that I was asking were geared towards that. And this person had a boyfriend and they had been together for 10 years and they had been a little bit on and off towards the end. And I was like, being curious about that. What's their dynamic looking like? What's their structure looking like? And the answers that this person was giving me were not feeling like they really knew what they were doing. So I decided that it did not feel safe to just even fuck, unfortunately. Now that I have a bit more capacity, or my capacity is like changing, I definitely know that whenever I date again, it's gonna feel like a bit of a job interview. And be like, okay, what are your structures right now? Like, what's your experience? Like, what I currently don't have a list of questions that I want to ask, but I know for sure that while the feelings are abundant, capacity, time, all that jazz is not as abundant. So I want to make sure that I honor those things and all of a sudden don't just like follow a feeling and then get burned at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know it's everyone has different things that are deal breakers for them. So there's not universal red flags necessarily always.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, people often ask me, like, what is a bad answer? What should I look out for? So you said this person had some answers that made you not feel like you even wanted to hook up. Would you be open to telling us, like, what made you kick the brakes,
For sure. I asked what's their SDI practice, and there wasn't a very clear answer. So that was a beige, because in my head I was like, okay, well, you're only seeing your boyfriend and you guys have been together for like a decade. So like maybe of course you haven't had SDI testing, although you should anyway, but like, okay. So I was like beige red, but if you're going out and about and you're seeing multiple people and you don't have an STI practice, that's definitely a red flag.
Mhm.
So, and that was like, beige, let me just keep asking questions. And then I was asking more about their dynamic and like any agreements that they had made, and there were no real answers around that. And I was like, so how does it look like if you have someone sleeping over, or how does it look like if you sleep over at someone's place? And there was no real answers on how any of that looked like. So I was like, so you have not had conversations with this person at all about how does it look? I was like, there's a moment where I was like, does this person even know that you're here with me tonight? There was a moment where I was like, I don't know, yo. I don't know. It just feels a little snicky. A little snicky. And so that's why I was like, I think I'm all right. I think I'm good. I don't need to do this today. Which in the past, I would have been like, fuck it. Not my problem. That's not my boyfriend. So bye.
You are very proudly Puerto Rican.
Yes.
In kind of navigating, I always like to see how identities can intersect with non-monogamous practices. And I'd love to get a little bit of your experience of being out as not only, non-binary and trans, but also as non-monogamous to your family and community.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I love it. Well, I feel like I'm healing a family thing by being openly polyamorous because my great grandma never married and had 3 men that she was seeing who were married and had kids somewhere else in the island. I don't even know. And she did this. She lived by herself. She had a bunch of kids with all these men who were married with other people. And her name is Doña Concha, and I have her very near and dear. I feel her in all my rituals. I feel her around me often. I know that she's always there with me. And so I feel like I'm like healing that by being openly and publicly, polyamorous. So that feels really good. My parents know about my polyamory. My dad, the very first time I like told him, he was like, I mean, people were fucking doing it already. They're doing it in secret. And I was like, cool. Okay. I think that went well. The first time I told my mom, her reaction was a bit more like, so you're cheating? And I was like, actually, I was, but not anymore because we're
It's complicated.
It's complicated. I was like, actually, I have. That was not okay, but now it's not like that. But of course, you very much can still cheat in polyamory. It sucks. But yeah, no, it was the initial one, but then the more we talked about it and the more both of them have seen it in motion, not just with me, but like, with my partner and seeing other people. And like, for a moment they were like, is it just you who see? And I was like, no, and they're really sweet when they ask questions. And whenever I tell them like, oh yeah, like this partner's going out with, this person and blah, blah, blah. Like, I talk it as if it was as normal as it feels for me. And it's been really sweet. There was a time also that my dad had a birthday in PR and the partner that was here was on a birthday dinner with my parents and I was on an anniversary with another partner and I FaceTimed and it was like, all right, we're doing it, like we're in it. And my parents have met everybody and it's been really sweet. My mom has also asked about my anchor friend. Mama, have you thought about like being with this person? I was like, well, we did have a moment of a will we, won't we, will they, won't they? And it felt like friendship was like the most satisfactory aligning route for the both of us. And Mom was like, okay, cool. Just check in. So it's really sweet to see, my parents with it. And I had a moment, I definitely want to continue expanding this because I know I'm very open with my parents and I realized that maybe I've not been as open. I talk about it with the rest of my family, but I don't think I've officially like talked it as like, hey, I am polyamorous. I've just been talking about partners and I don't think the rest of my family has like really internalized it. So I'm curious that whenever I have like a holiday or some sort of party and they see everybody out and about doing their thing. Yeah, I wonder how they're going to react. But I think, my family at this point is just like, what's next? What you got? What else are you going to bring to the table?
Like you can't shock me with anything else anymore.
They're just like, okay, what's happening now? But yeah, culturally, culturally men had a lot of women and women only had the one, right? Like my brother and I, when we were little, like I remember one of my grandmas, may she rest in peace, she would ask him like, how are your girlfriends?
Mm.
And then my brother was fucking 9, you know what I'm saying? And then like she would look at me and was like, how's your boyfriend? And I'm like, okay, hold up, like I have a singular one, but then like my brother can have multiple, the fuck. So it's wildly known culturally that that's happening. So, and also how jealousy is played into, if you're not jealous, you don't really love this person. Like there's a lot of stuff that I've had to deconstruct, you know, where back in my monogamous heterosexual life, I thought that I needed to make the boyfriend jealous in order to like get a rise out of him, you know, which is so fucked up. It's like not okay. Everybody should feel safe and across the board in the relationship. And similarly, because of that cultural like association with jealousy and anger and violence, I had a lot of shame for feeling jealousy. Once I began to kind of be like, okay, no, hold up, like jealousy is this feeling and it's telling me something. What's going on? Let's like be kind and like loving. I'm not gonna react out of jealousy. I can like feel it and acknowledge it and like figure out what's up. And maybe there's a need that I haven't like voiced or whatever that may be. But yeah, that culturally, those are the things that I've had to like be like, okay, hold up. Let's reframe some of the stuff and reconfigure out some of this because no bueno.
So, I mean, I'm going to keep, because I have so many more out now. So, you know, obviously at the top, I introduced some of the work you've done, and I think probably a lot of people might know you from Our Flag Means Death. And I think for anyone who's seen it, for any fans, the non-monogamous over and undertones are not exactly subtle. You know, I think I certainly could see myself in there, and I think a lot of people have kind of claimed the show as like a polyamorous show.
Yes.
And so, you know, I'd love to just kind of get a sense from you of what it was like getting to participate in a show that at minimum didn't denigrate those kinds of connections and maybe even celebrated them and navigated them and explored them more.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I mean, when I was working on the first season, was finishing up reading Polysecure, and I was talking about this book that I'm reading and how excited I am about dating and like all these things and like, oh my gosh. So all the writers have known my dating life pretty intimately. It was really cool to have them like ask me questions and be like, okay, so how would it look like, you know, if these two characters like shifted and like without like being very like the same thing that happened with Jim in the first season about like what it means to be non-binary or gender fluid or gender queer or agender. It's just like I'm just Jim, right? And as someone, as I've said in the show, that I've learned a lot about myself, and I through polyamory and through being with multiple people at the same time that showcase different things about me. And I've accessed different parts of me through this, right? I similarly wanted that for Jim, where like Jim starts to access more of their tenderness and softness because of their dynamic with Olu. And then with their dynamic with like Archie, they start to access more of their playfulness, which is really sweet as you see them like kind of grow and like learn and unpack like who they are and take more space in the pirate ship. For the scene where I say that Olu is my anchor, it's also kind of, you know, a little thing with the being it is a ship, you know, a pirate ship. And it's like, this makes sense. This person's my anchor, right?
I'll say that personally, my favorite line kind of in the vein of this stuff was when Jim was like, I mean, I don't know. I feel weird saying a line that you deliver, but
You're so good.
But you know, it says, you know, I wanted to tell you because you're the person you're like the friend I want to tell these things to.
Absolutely.
And I was just like, oh, my life on screen.
100%, 100%. It's like, I want you to be happy and find fulfillment in all your relationships.
Be able to come home and tell your friends and your partners about your date and how great it was.
Exactly.
Because you're excited.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
There's a lot of other stuff that, of course, you know, gets cut because of time and all that jazz. But even in that party, Olu has like a little flower on his vest, and it was a flower that Jim gave him at the market because Jim smelled it and was like, it smells like that chick you were making out with, you know? Like, do you miss her? And we have a whole conversation about that. And I was like, oh, I'm going to put this flower on you so that you have like that reminder. So even though it's the three of us dancing, like Zhang's jasmine flowers are there, like in that like, moment.
Sweet.
And I was like, man, if we get a third season, how dope would it be to see how does that look like with Zhang too? And like, how are we the four of us, in this scenario, right? Are we all together? Are we not? Is it, what's the vibe? Are we into each other? Like, I'm sure we all are. In my head, we all are. But yeah, it was really, really amazing to have some dope combos.
Yeah.
It's fucking rad.
You're like a polyamory consultant for HBO.
low key, high key. Yeah, there were so many sweet moments in that show that really just felt very affirming. And
I think specifically that sweetness and that playfulness and that ease being depicted on screen is what was so awesome about it. Because like so often, I mean, Genevieve has an entire YouTube channel just looking at non-monogamy in film and TV. And like, we have this big long list of movies and shows. And like, so many of them are just like, maybe we'll get to it later, because it's the same story again and again of like, wow, we're trying to open up and it's hard and bad.
They're just
And,
bummers.
like, the whole thing is a bummer, or the conflict itself is just the premise of can non-monogamy work? And so it's like really refreshing to see a show that not only isn't, viewing non-monogamy as a conflict point, but as like a point of joy and like pleasure and just being easy and fun.
Yep.
And just being like, yes, that's actually what it looks like a lot of the time.
Yes. Right now I'm like after this I'm gonna have dinner with my partner and then just like drive them to a date, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like that kind of stuff is like so sweet. Like I love that.
It's really valuable, everything you've shared today. So thank you.
Thank you. My goodness.
Yeah. I'd love to invite you to plug any other projects you're working on or anything you want to let the audience know about.
Whew, absolutely. I have a lot of creative endeavors that I'm currently doing. I'm doing a lot of writing. You can see some samples of that on my Patreon, which I believe is just patreon.com/Vico_Ortiz, if I'm not mistaken. I have a solo show that I am now in the process of like getting it up and running. And since I'm in Puerto Rico, I might end up doing it in Spanish first, which is actually kind of nice. I'm into that. And I'm beginning to be more active on Blue Sky via Vico-Ortiz. I'm slowly but surely doing the transition between social medias and trying to like not use Meta as much. It's gonna be a transition on its own, but yeah, I'm writing a lot and I'm excited about that. It's nerve-wracking to put a piece of your soul and your heart on a piece of digital paper and sharing it with the world, and then eventually do it on stage, but I'm excited.
And if people want to check out the show that we were talking about, where can they stream it?
You can watch Our Flag Means Death on Max. It's HBO. It's HBO
It's just
Max.
HBO Max.
I'll cut the audio of my eyes rolling when you had to say Max instead of
Strange
HBO.
branding.
I know, just like, anyway, it's HBO Max. You're gonna be fine. But yeah, and I'm also on Sex Lives of College Girls. Their third season is out as well on Max. And
Podcast.
oh, I have a podcast. That's right.
Whisper it.
That's so right. You can also listen to me straight up every day, Monday through Friday, on Today in Gay Pod. It's available wherever you get your podcasts, and you can also follow us on Substack if you want more in-depth BTS links to all of our research and safe community chats as well. But yeah, Today in Gay Podcast with Nate Beaver and Bex Taylor Klaus. Ah, that's right.
I think that's the first time I've ever had to be like, hey, plug this.
Here's another thing. They're doing a lot.
I mean,
It's
that is
easy to-
fair.
You're so
That
good.
is
You're so
fair.
good. I was like, right, I have this podcast. So good.
Cool.
Well, if you're looking for more specifically polyamory content, Genevieve, as always, is on TikTok and Instagram at Chill Polyamory. Also, as mentioned, she's on YouTube at Chill Polyamory, where she discusses non-monogamy in film and TV.
So if you're listening and you want to support those projects and this podcast directly on Patreon, where you'll get early access to videos, private stories, live Q&As, an option for one-on-one peer support, there's a lot there. So that's patreon.com/chillpolyamory.
And to all of our listeners, this has been I Could Never. And remember that just because you've never done something before doesn't mean that you can't do it.
Bye.